Hello, my name is Abby Castriata, and I'm a senior double major in environmental studies and studio art. This unlikely combination is deliberate, and I think that my visual art portfolio will explain why I chose these two subject areas for my studies at Colby Sawyer College. Both fields are similar because they require close observation and reflection on the world around us. I believe that being a scientist has made me a better artist, and being an artist has made me a better scientist because the two ways of knowing help me to see the beauty of the world from different angles. If I were to write out my instructions for living life, they would look like this quote by my favorite poet, Mary Oliver. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. I think that many of us in this world of technology, myself included, sometimes simply forget to pay attention. But the scientist and the artist in me remind me to pay attention to the details, the themes, and the changes around me. The second instruction is to be astonished. This one comes easily to me as I am astonished by so many simple and mundane happenings. These astonishments inform my art making. The third instruction is tell about it, and this I do through my art. I hope that my art reminds others of the simple beauty around us and the grace in everyday moments. The following pieces showcase the careful attention I give to the natural world. I will start with this zine because it illustrates the intersection of my two majors. As part of my capstone data collection, I conducted 60 insect sweeps and preserved each of the samples to be identified later. I dreaded this piece of my capstone as my main focus is birds, and insects were simply one of the X variables. But I could not believe the diversity and elegance of the insects I collected. So as I preserved and therefore killed upwards of 900 insects, I drew some of the most stunning specimens in this mini zine I titled Insect Obituary. Here are a few of the pages. Over the summer of 2019, I worked as an intern for Karen Talbot, a scientific illustrator in Rockland, Maine. She tasked me with illustrating interpretive signs for the old varieties of apple trees on the property. This sign depicts the Wolf River apple in its early and ripe forms, as well as the bark and a local pollinator that would frequent the flowers. This piece was made with a base of watercolor, layered over with colored pencil and highlights of acrylic as the top layer. I tended to stray away from mixed media until this piece opened my eyes to the new possibilities. This piece was a large graphite commission where I was able to practice my scientific illustration skills. Some commissions you enjoy more than others, and this one I really enjoyed because I rarely receive graphite commissions and horseshoe crabs just happen to be my favorite animal. The folds in the shell remind me of fabric, and this was a good practice in value study. I am a bird watcher and am amazed every spring at the birds that migrate through. This is one example where I was able to tell about this ephemeral phenomenon through art. I have sold many prints of this piece and have had people tell me that they hang it next to a window so that they can practice their bird identification. Here are a few close-ups of some of the species. This piece of the Big Five African mammals was commissioned by a patron who liked the poster-like design of the spring birds. Again, here are a few close-ups of the animals. These next pieces attempt to capture fleeting moments. I think that each one feels almost like a breath or a heartbeat. Often they are not extraordinary scenes, but ones where I find calmness. These two pieces are an interior and exterior view of a morning at my cottage in Cushing, Maine. There's something very velvety about morning light in Maine, and I tried to capture that here. This was my first piece using gouache, and I fell in love with the opacity and illustrative quality of the medium. Inside the cottage, there is no running water, so in this painting, I am washing dishes from the night before under jugs of water. I like to capture the stillness and calmness of these mundane tasks. I hope that my paintings like this remind people to slow down and enjoy simple moments. In Aspen Shadows 2, I attempted to capture a similar scene, but with a much more illustrative method. I had so much fun making this piece, and it reminded me of the constant need to experiment, both to enjoy the process of art making and to become a better artist. You may recognize this house from Andrew Wyeth's painting Christina's World. Nobody lives in Christina's house anymore, and although the house is a landmark that attracts many visitors, I've always felt a weighing sadness and loneliness around the property that sits just down the road from my little cottage. I felt that this purple evening on Hawthorne Point matched the aura of the old house. Here's a close-up of the house details. I like the gouache medium because it allows me to experiment with color and leave solid marks in a way that watercolor does not. In the Shade of the Fig Tree is one of my most recent pieces in terms of creation, but it has been in my mind for a few years. The scene is from my perspective sitting in a small backyard in southern France. My friend Naïs is getting her dress hemmed by her grandmother, and I'm eating figs from the tree overhead. The lighting and timelessness of the summer afternoon was already a painting before I put it on canvas. In this piece, I was able to experiment with the opaque gouache to illustrate the transparency of water. This piece illustrates the simple movement of bending down to pick up a periwinkle from the rock. While the pieces of the human figure are in the foreground, the landscape is the focus of the scene, and the human is only an element of that environment. I have realized that I love works in a series, and zines are a perfect way to display a series. I created these stamps designs in the Russian constructivist style for my graphic design history class. It seemed very applicable due to the abundance of voters that voted by mail in the most recent 2020 election. In high school, I learned that I love to work with cut paper because it allows for another layer of texture and dimension in my work. Here are some close-ups of the stamps. Portraits were my first artistic love. This piece is from an old photo of my mom. The simple color palette and Conte medium was a step away from my usual style, but I feel that it worked well to convey the scene from her childhood. Ceramics is not my primary medium, but I've come to love the process. My dad is a woodworker, and I think it is in my blood to love the process of building something and getting my hands dirty. Ceramics lets me do that. I especially love creating hand-built sculptures such as this one, inspired by Inuit stone carvings. When I studied in Italy during 2019, I thought I was going to the Florence School of Fine Arts to hone my drawing skills, but I ended up being fully immersed in printmaking and I loved it. I tried everything from letterpress to soft ground to dry point etching. These two pieces are lithographs inspired by scenes from my time in Florence. Lithography, and printmaking in general, is another medium that requires you to become engrossed in the process. I feel that this last piece showcases my ever so slightly evolving style. I created this piece while I was stuck in quarantine and pining for some of my favorite places. I always gravitate towards small pieces like this. New England homes are meant for small pieces. There are too many nooks and crannies and windows for large pieces. These are meant to be hung vertically to fit nicely in the space between two windows. While the overviews are on the realistic side, I tried to emphasize the mark making and the patterns in each of the landscapes more than anything. As I move forward in my artistic career, I hope to continue working with this illustrative quality that I can achieve through gouache and colored pencil. I will always continue to experiment and express my astonishment with the world through art. Here's a fun little illustration of my fat cat to conclude my presentation. I would like to thank Loretta Barnett for convincing me that art and environmental studies would make the perfect combination. Laura Young for helping me to develop as a professional artist, Rachel Gross for helping me to push my paintings to the next level, and John Keenan for helping me to set up my senior show. If you would like to view my works in person, they are on display in the Center for Art and Design. Thank you for watching.